Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Donald Trump is taking the idea of Star Wars to a whole new level. He's announced that the United States will build a Golden Dome missile defense shield, and Elon Musk's SpaceX, Palantir and Anduril will have a major role to play in it. Originally proposed by Donald Trump in January 2025, the Golden Dome will be a space-based missile air defense system that will be capable of destroying missiles within seconds of their launch. The weaponization of space is a major concern. Military satellites are nothing new. Every nation that can put a satellite into space has dual-use satellites, or satellites that are specifically meant for military purposes. But what Donald Trump is now suggesting turns space into a whole new battlefield. No country so far has officially accepted that its satellites in space are equipped with missiles and other weapons. But Donald Trump's Golden Dome breaches a fundamental red line. In the event of hostilities, those satellites that are equipped with missiles and other weapons, instead of just being critical infrastructure, become legitimate targets. There are 4 nations at the moment that boast the capability of shooting a satellite down, even though a satellite travels at a staggering speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. And once satellites become legitimate targets in the event of hostilities, the modern age as we know it will come to an end. Our next poll gets you the details. The Golden Dome missile defense system changes the rules of engagement at a very fundamental level in space. Trump's close aide Elon Musk's SpaceX will take the lead in building this new missile defense system, even though SpaceX itself will not have a military role to play. But Palantir, led by Peter Thiel, and Anduril will. When completed, this would be the first time that the United States would be placing missile interceptors in orbits around the Earth. The Golden Dome is an ambitious missile defense program, unlike anything the world has ever witnessed. SpaceX will build a constellation of 400 to 1,000 satellites that will orbit around the Earth to detect missiles and to track their trajectory. Another 200 satellites armed with interceptor missiles handled by other contractors will shoot down any enemy missile almost as soon as it is launched. Donald Trump believes a missile launched at the United States is the biggest threat that the United States faces. But by placing missiles in space, what Trump is unleashing is a space race in outer space. But Russia seems to have stolen a lead over America in the weaponization of space. On the 9th of February 2024, Russia launched its Soyuz 2-1V rocket from its Plesetsk cosmodrome that is located about 800 kilometers north of Moscow. The Russian space agency Roscosmos confirmed that its new military satellite called Cosmos 2575 had been successfully placed into an orbit. Cosmos 2575 is a surveillance satellite that is used by the Russian military. But on the 4th of January 2024, the 18th Space Defense Squadron of the United States had detected another Russian satellite called the Cosmos 2499, which had suddenly disintegrated into 85 pieces of trackable debris. And this newly created space junk is now orbiting at an altitude of 1,169 kilometers above Earth. This unexpected splintering of the Russian satellite sparked a lot of speculation. Cosmos 2499 had originally been launched by Russia in May 2014, and along with Cosmos 2491, the 2 secretive Russian military satellites had performed orbital rendezvous and inspection maneuvers. It was widely speculated back then that the 2 satellites were testing tech that would allow spacecraft to chase down and perhaps even disable other satellites. But the 9th of February 2024 launch by Russia was not any ordinary anti-satellite weapon. What is now being widely speculated is the possibility that Russia is developing nuclear anti-satellite weapons that will be stationed in space. Article 4 of the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 bans nuclear weapons from being put into orbit, installed on celestial bodies, or otherwise be stationed in outer space. The Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963 also bars the testing of nuclear weapons in outer space. So while the United States, as part of its Golden Dome, is planning to deploy satellites equipped with missiles to intercept other missiles, the Russians appear to be deploying nuclear anti-satellite weapons in space, setting off a space arms race unlike anything we've witnessed in the past. The use of drones on the battlefield has changed modern warfare forever. Drones are small, very economical, and can strike with deadly accuracy at military hardware that can cost millions of dollars. So how does one counter these drones that in the last few years have turned the economy of war on its head? Well, the answer lies in the use of laser guns that can knock a drone out from the sky at the cost of a few dollars. And this week, DRDO, which is India's primary agency for defense research and development, unveiled a Star Wars-like laser weapon that can intercept and knock down enemy drone swarms, aircraft, and even missiles from the sky. And it can do this at a cost of about $2 a hit. And with this, India has joined an elite group of nations such as the United States, Russia, China, Israel, and South Korea that have developed these laser-directed energy weapon systems. So what advantage do these high-energy laser beams have over conventional interceptor missiles, and how do they perform in an actual war zone? Our next report gets you the details. On the 13th of April, India successfully demonstrated its latest addition to its arsenal. Designed and developed by India's DRDO, this laser-based directed energy weapon changes the game of interception and air defense systems in South Asia. In this video released by DRDO, in the field test that was conducted in Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh, the 30 kilowatt laser directed energy weapon called MK2A shot down a drone by frying up its electronics. Laser guns have many advantages. The laser beam is practically invisible and noiseless. No separate variety of ammunition is required. And the laser gun can be operated so long as electricity is available. Speaking after the successful test, DRDO's chairman Dr. Samir V. Kamath hailed this moment as a beginning of a journey.
Yes, this is one of the technologies, but we are also working on other high energy systems like high energy microwaves, electromagnetic pulse. So we are working on several technologies which will give us the Star Wars capability. What you saw today was one of the components of the Star Wars technologies.
India is also developing a bigger, high-powered 300 kilowatt laser directed energy weapon called Surya, which will have an effective range of 20 kilometers to shoot down fighter aircraft and fast-moving missiles. The Russia-Ukraine war and the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip has thrown up a peculiar problem. Shooting down drones that cost thousands of dollars with interceptor missiles that cost millions of dollars is a recipe for bankruptcy. The much-touted Israeli Iron Dome was rendered ineffective by Hamas merely by firing hundreds of crude missiles and drones. So Israel too has been developing its own unique laser interception system. This video, tweeted by Naftali Bennett, the then Prime Minister of Israel in April 2022, will give you a glimpse of the technology that Israel is developing. Called the Iron Beam, the interceptor system has an effective range of 7 kilometers. The laser beam can reach energy levels of 10 kilowatt with a focus diameter of a coin. The iron beam is effective against drones, rockets and mortars, and a single laser shot costs about $3.50. In fact, on the 13th of April 2024, when Iran launched a barrage of missiles and drones over Israel, Tel Aviv resorted to the use of its own laser iron beam to shoot down the Iranian projectiles. But there is no official information on how successful these Israeli laser beam interceptions were. The former British Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, in March 2024, boasted of Britain's under-development laser beam that can intercept targets at the speed of light. Called the Dragonfire, this laser beam can be based on ground or even be deployed on ships. In less than 4 seconds of exposure on the target, the laser beam can burn the drone's electronics and knock it down. But it'll be another 2 years before this piece of British technology is used in active combat. South Korea is also developing a laser weapon called Block 1. It has been deployed along the North Korean border to bring down projectiles that North Korea sends across the DMZ. Block 1 is just the beginning of South Korea's Star Wars project. Seoul is also developing Block 2, a bigger variety of the laser gun that will have a longer range and will be able to shoot down not just slow-moving drones, but even the fast-moving fighter jets and missiles. The United States has been using high-powered lasers since at least 2014. The Optical Dazzler Interdictor Navy, otherwise known as Odin, was installed on the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers such as the USS Pons for field testing. It is one thing to strike out and knock down stationary or slow-moving targets, but to bring down zipping missiles and fighter jets from a distance is no mean technological challenge. Because the laser beams no doubt move at the speed of light, but they must be focused on a moving projectile long enough to fry up its electronics to put it out of action. All these laser weapons have a limited effective range, but Russia in its claims goes one step further. The Russian laser weapon, called the Peresvet, is not just an air defense laser beam. In fact, it boasts of anti-satellite capabilities. First unveiled in 2018, at least 5 units of the Peresvet are said to be in active duty at the moment to take down enemy drones and missiles. Laser beam weapons have so far largely remained a part of science fiction, but the coming days will show us as to how effective they are in real combat situations. More than 51,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 116,000 others have been wounded in the relentless Israeli military bombings over the Gaza Strip. The Israeli bombardment resumed again in March after a January ceasefire fell apart. The coastal enclave now resembles a wasteland of rubble, where more bombs fall on a daily occasion. According to the Israeli military, by October 2024, it had carried out more than 40,000 airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Mine Action Service estimates that between 1 in 10 or perhaps 1 in 20 bombs that were dropped by the Israelis on the Gaza Strip did not explode. For a densely populated area like Gaza, the challenge to clear these lethal remnants hidden amongst more than 50 million tons of rubble is going to be a mammoth task. Our next report gets more details.
Barely 2 weeks after the Israel-Hamas ceasefire came into effect on the 19th of January, the newly inaugurated US President Donald Trump made a suggestion that elicited widespread condemnation. The very idea that the United States should take over Gaza and be responsible for clearing unexploded bombs. All in a bid to create what he dubbed the Riviera of the Middle East was proof that the real estate tycoon still lurked somewhere within the persona of the US president.
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent and I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be this could be so magnificent.
The Gaza Strip, strewn with undetonated explosives from tens of thousands of Israeli airstrikes, has rendered the territory uninhabitable, according to the US government. The UN Mine Action Service, which removes explosive remnants besides educating locals and helping victims of the war, it said that its disposal teams have spotted hundreds of pieces of war ordnance on the surface, including aircraft bombs, mortars, rockets and improvised explosive devices. Many more, it is feared, could be concealed either in the rubble or lodged underground as deep buried bombs. According to a database compiled by a forum of UN agencies and NGOs working in Gaza, at least 23 people have been killed and 162 wounded by discarded or unexploded ordnance. But the aid workers are of the opinion that the number could be a tiny fraction of the actual number of victims. Hamas, which claims to have harvested some unexploded ordnance for use against Israel, has also expressed its willingness to cooperate with international bodies to remove it. But reportedly, Israel once again has played the spoil sport by restricting the imports into the enclave of goods that can have a military use. Between March and July last year, Israeli authorities rejected questions to import more than 20 types of demining equipment, from binoculars to armored vehicles to firing cables for detonations, representing a total of over 2,000 items. Under the 1907 Hague Convention, Israel, though not a signatory, has an obligation as an occupying power to remove or help remove war remnants that endanger the lives of civilians. Experts are of the opinion that in the absence of a survey, it's too early to estimate how many unexploded munitions are in Gaza. Even if Israel were to cooperate unreservedly in this endeavor, and it is a big if, it is estimated that it could take 10 years and $500 million to clear these bombs. Till that happens, deminers say one can only hope to mark ordnance and avoid accidents, especially involving children, the most vulnerable.
On the 16th of April, the Islamist militant group Al-Shabab raided the strategically significant town of Adan Yabal in central Somalia using heavy explosives. Heavy fighting in fact broke out soon after, in which the Somali army was forced to retreat. The Al-Shabab armed group later claimed to have seized control of the town, though the Somali army disputes the claim. According to the Somali Information Ministry, the United States and Somalia have carried out a well-coordinated airstrike against the Islamist militants in the battle for control of the key town the same day, in which at least about 12 militants, including several senior officers from the Al-Qaeda-linked group, were killed. The latest fighting has sparked fears of a jihadist resurgence in Somalia after an escalation in the militant attacks recently. So why has the Somali government failed in bringing an end to this insurgency by the Islamist group Al-Shabab? Our next report gets you more details.
The central Somali town of Adan Yabal, a critical logistical hub for the government forces, about 220 kilometers north of the capital, Mogadishu, was stormed by the Islamist militant group Al-Shabab early on Wednesday. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who hails from the area, had visited the town last month and met military commanders, thereby underscoring its strategic significance in the fight against the militants. Adan Yabal, in the Middle Shabelle region, was seized by Al-Shabab in 2016 before being recaptured by the government forces in 2022. The jihadists were put on the back foot in 2022 and 2023 by the African Union-led peacekeeping force but the group remains, despite the Somali government claims, a potent force to be reckoned with. In recent months, the jihadists have regrouped and launched a series of counterattacks, including one that targeted President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed's convoy last month. The airstrike, late on Wednesday, carried out with support from the US Africa Command, or AFRICOM, were an attempt to recapture the town of Aden Yabal. The next day, in a separate incident, the National Army claimed to have killed at least 35 Al-Shabab militants near the city of Baidoa, after they attempted to attack an army base there. The militant group Al-Shabab had first emerged in response to neighboring Ethiopia's invasion of Somalia in 2006. It frequently carries out bombings and assaults targeting government officials and military personnel in the Horn of Africa nation. Its success can be gauged by the fact that they have been able to create and maintain a parallel government in a de facto state within Somalia's official borders. Besides providing security for civilians under its rule, they operate an independent judiciary and collect somewhere between $100 million and $150 million in taxes annually. Though President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed has repeatedly downplayed the advances by Al-Shabab, saying that occasional battlefield setbacks were inevitable in a long battle, this latest attack is yet another grim reminder that the Al-Shabab militants remain a big threat in the Federal Republic of Somalia.
In a massive blow to organized crime, police in Europe conducted some unprecedented raids in which more than 200 people, ranging from the top brass to the low-end street criminals, were arrested on the 15th of April. Alongside the arrests, more than 21 tons of drugs, including 3.3 million MDMA tablets, were also seized by officers in Operation Bulut, which translates to cloud in Turkish. Now, these raids, conducted across 5 countries, primarily in Turkey, targeted 4 organized crime groups. Apart from Turkey, arrests were also made by the police in the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany and Spain. So how significant is this mega operation against the drug trafficking networks? And more importantly, are there more such operations in the works? Our next report gets you more details.
On Tuesday, the Turkish Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya announced what is being billed as one of the biggest strikes against organized crime groups in recent years.
Today, we carried out a very big operation in the morning hours. This operation was aimed at high-ranking members of organized crime syndicates who trafficked in narcotics on a national and international scale and tried to launder the results of this crime.
In the simultaneous raids across 5 countries launched against ruthless international organized crime syndicates, a total of 234 organized crime syndicate members, 225 of them in Turkey, were detained. In the run-up to the operation, documents and intelligence was shared, leading to the arrests, which included 10 criminals who were wanted with a red notice.
The persons we identified were also responsible for 21 tons 251 kilos of narcotics and 3,320,000 tablets of narcotic pills seized in our country and abroad. We were confronted with a giant international organization.
Yerlikaya also said the transnational drug trafficking organizations were aiming to ship cocaine to Turkey and Europe by sea and land from South American countries, as well as heroin from Iran and Afghanistan, skunk cannabis through the Balkans and ecstasy through Europe. The European Union police agency Europol, which coordinated the sting, believes the operation, with a network approach, sends out a big message of deterrence to organized crime. The 4 dismantled networks were also involved in money laundering, violent crime and other shady criminal activities. Reportedly, the sting was also made possible courtesy decrypted messages from 4 years ago of cracked encrypted communications platforms Sky ECC and Anom used by criminals.
So this operation is actually based on the information that we got from these decrypted messages from Sky and Anom. And it was 4 years ago. So these decrypted messages that gave us this intelligence picture, this complete picture of this criminal network, and based on that, in these years, we actually followed up, and this operation is actually the result of it.
Given the proverbial gold mine of intercepted messages described as the gift that keeps on giving, this major success is not only a big boost in the fight against the transnational drug trafficking organizations, but a harbinger of things to come.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.